Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy today's sermon by our pastoral staff at Christpoint Church. We also want you to know that if you have any questions, prayer requests, or need information on any of our ministry opportunities, you can email us at www.info@christpoint.church. We love you and we are praying that this will be the best year yet. Welcome home.
Belshazzar was the acting king. So you see where we are here, because Belshazzar says, and I'm not going to have it in here, but I want you to read it. He says, whoever can tell me what that said, bring somebody in and tell me what that said, because I'm freaked out. I'm freaked out. It says that his hips were out of joint and his knees knocked together. That's crazy scared. Now, I've never been that scared, but he is scared to pieces. Somebody can tell me what that says on that wall, and if that person can tell me, I'm going to put a royal robe on them, and I'm going to make them third in charge. Why would he say third in charge? Because the thing Daniel has in common with every king, all four kings of Babylon, is that he was right there speaking into their ear. So Daniel was placed number 2. Joseph was placed number 2 in the kingdom under Pharaoh. Why would he say number 3? Because he knows that Nabonidus is 1, he knows that he is 2, and he can't give away those 2 spots, so the person would be third in charge. So that's proof right there about itself. So Belshazzar is the acting king in the absence of his father, who's out promoting sinful things. So the grandfather takes sacred vessels from Israel. The son, probably the son-in-law, goes away. The grandson is the acting king, and I think this guy's got an issue. I think he's all jacked up because he's not the actual king, and he wants everybody to look at him as king. So when you're just kind of co-king, when you're just kind of you're shoehorned in because of daddy, well, daddy's money got me here. You always want to feel like you got to prove yourself. So he's trying to prove himself. So the grandson, the acting king Belshazzar, has the Medo-Persian army surrounding the city. And here's the thing. He's in charge, and he's placed all his faith in the city's defenses. How many times do we place all of our faith in everything that we have? Oh, you know what? I've got enough money I've got enough money, I can afford that. Or you know what? I feel really secure. Let me give you an example. I can keep doing what I'm doing because my job is very secure. There's someone very close to me in my life right now, very secure, made a lot of money, very successful, kind of regional, all over the whole southeast region and the corporation. About 3 weeks ago, after 15, 20 years, ever since I've known him, maybe 25 years, we don't need you anymore. That's how quickly his security was gone. Very wise investor, though, so he's not going to be in trouble. But the thing is that's how quickly we can let you go. So Belshazzar, he's got an army wanting to invade him outside the city walls. He's sitting inside the city walls where it's nice and comfortable, like I did this week. I didn't go out too much because I have a 2-wheel drive truck. So I didn't go out. So in other words, I don't know what it's doing out there. I was comfortable. My heat and air was working really well. So you know what? I'm in there very comfortable. Belshazzar's sitting in there cooling and chilling, man. Everything's going pretty cool. See, here's the thing. He was living in the largest city on the earth at the time. 200,000 people lived inside this city. This was the largest city of it in the world at its time. It had walls around it 17 miles plus. The walls were 22 feet thick, and some of those were double walls at that. So now we've got 22-foot thick walls, and it was literally a fortress. They were 90 feet high, and the towers were 100 feet. Remember last week, the difference between towers and walls is so you can see the enemy coming from a long way away. And sometimes we need to put towers in our lives of people who could see the enemy coming. You know what? You're a recovering addict. Get yourself away from the bar. Get yourself away from the people that drag you down, because I'm a tower right now, and you're a wall, and I can see the enemy coming. So that's why we pull towers into our lives. So it had bronze gates. It had moats where people could drown if they even tried to attack it. He was secure. Man, I got the biggest army in the world trying to take my city. Here I am. I'm doing a good job. Look at me. Toast. Hey, you get me something to toast in. Get me something of the Lord's to toast in. So this is very important. the Euphrates River, we'll look at this in just a second. The Euphrates River divided the city. In lots of cities, Nashville is a city that surrounds the Cumberland River. A good example would be St. Louis. St. Louis, there is no city west. It's actually Illinois. So there is no city west of the Mississippi. It's all on the or east of the Mississippi. It's all on the west side. So we're going to get back to this river and how it splits. So let's jump to verse 3. Then they brought in the golden vessels. Bring me those golden vessels. Go get those things. Now, here's the thing I want to know. How does he know that they're there? How does he know what they are? How does he know where they came from? He knows all of these details. He says, bring me those vessels that had been taken out of the temple, out of the house of God, not just the house of God anywhere, but the house of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his lords and his wives and his concubines drank from them. Man, we got a problem right here. Here's where we got a problem. So Grandpa started this downslide when he took the vessels. And you say, well, he should have never took the vessels. Yes, he should have. Because they destroyed that city. And the people, the church was carried off. So the vessels needed to go with the church. Because they would have just been disrespected back there. So that was okay. But here's how all of this started with the grandfather. The grandfather didn't model a proper respect for the sacred things of God. So here's the problem. I've watched my grandfather. I watched him. I watched Shadrach, Meshach. I watched Shack and Beanie come walking out of the fire without a single smell on them. They didn't have a blister. I watched the Lord rescue them out of nothing. I watched my father eat grass like an animal and grow hair on him and go nuts and crazy, and the Lord restore him. You know what? Here's where this went off track, is he didn't talk enough about the Lord to his grandson. What one generation neglects, this is that thing you can repost, retweet. What one generation neglects, the next generation pays for. What one generation neglects, the next one's going to pay for. Let me break that down a little further. What one generation tolerates, the next generation dies because of. Let me show you what that looks like. If this generation just sits back and lets every gun right be taken away from us, our Second Amendment rights be taken away from us, then the next generation will be put to death because they have no way to defend themselves. So I'm not getting political here. I don't care who you are. I'm not for giving up my gun. So you can make a decision right here. I'm going to stand for what I believe, or my children and my sons are going to pay for it. So if we don't, in other words, if I don't fight for an unborn child's life right now, then you know what? Somebody in my family may just say, well, I thought it was normal to have an abortion. So we've got to teach now. So what one generation tolerates, the next generation dies because of. So let's go to verse 4. Then they drank wine and they praised the gods. I just can't get on the same wavelength as some of these crazy nuts. They praised the gods of gold and of silver. All these things are not alive, by the way, of iron and of bronze and wood and stone. And Nebuchadnezzar knew, he should have taught his grandson better than this. Because let me show you in Daniel chapter 4, verse 37, this is what Nebuchadnezzar says. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven. So in other words, this man gave his life to the Lord in 21 terms. In 21 terms, he gave his heart and his life to the Lord. Everybody should have known about this. Let me tell you, the greatest travesty is to walk with the Lord and nobody ever know about it. My gosh, that is not the Great Commission. We are supposed to take what is in us and take it out. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. So we have proof in right at the end of chapter 4, and then we move right on into chapter 5, that Nebuchadnezzar walked with the Lord. So now, let me just jump a little side teaching. It does matter. I'm just going to tell you, it does matter that we serve the Lord. It's very important that we serve the Lord. It does matter that we teach our children to serve the Lord. It does matter that what we neglect in this generation will be paid for in the next. It does matter. So let's jump into verse 5 real quick of chapter 5, and let's read this. Immediately, dude, you asked for this. You asked for this. Bring me them cups. What's the big deal of these? I heard about them. I may have even seen them a few times. But this is what we can look at. I'm going to show all these people that think God did all this with Rack, Shack, and Benny, and God did all this with my grandfather, and God is all that. I'm going to show them who's real God. I'm going to show them that, you know what? And then, there again, I think he's insecure. I think he's trying to get himself a platform. I think he is trying his best to make himself exalted, and everything else has to go down in order for him to go up, including the Lord. So immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall, and the king saw it. That's very important. We're going to look at that. The king saw it as the hand as it wrote, and he got freaked out. So here's what that hand wrote back to Daniel chapter 5, verse 25. Not to the church. He wrote this to that king. Mene, mene, tekel, parzin, or Perez. The king couldn't read it because he wasn't Jewish. The enchanters were called in. They couldn't read it because they weren't Christian. The Chaldeans and the astrologers, they couldn't read it because they weren't the church. See, here's the thing. Sometimes God only gives a message to somebody, to his people, not somebody else. But notice, many times in the Bible, God gave the vision, God gave the dream, and in this case, the words to the king, but he gave the interpretation to the slave. You can read that. I don't know what chapter it's in my book, but anyway, you can read that. So he gave the interpretation to the slave. So let me tell you, God's not going to qualify you the way you qualify you. Well, I should be heard because I study the Word. Yeah, God's like, look, I'm going to listen to what Daniel has to say. Not the one wearing the crown, the one who's basically wearing my crown. That's the one I'm listening to. So this is the way Hebrew was written. Hebrew was written from right to left. Hebrew had no vowels and only consonants. So he would see the letters MN, TKL, PRS. That's what he would see. I don't know what that means. The hand writes that on the wall, and I don't know what that means. I'm about to freak out here. Somebody's got to tell me what this means. So all of this chapter 5 gets down to where finally Daniel comes in. So that's where we get verse 25. Here's what this means. Mene, meaning mina, meaning 50 shekels, also means, the word means to number. So Daniel breaks it down for us. It means to number. TKL or tekel is also another word for shekel, which shekel means to weigh. So we've got numbered and we've got weighed, and Perez or PRS or parzin means literally a half a shekel, and you don't get a half a shekel without dividing it. So it means basically numbered, weighed, and divided. So he tells him, he says, hey, your kingdom or your days have been numbered. Your kingdom is about to be stripped from you. You have been weighed and found wanting, and your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And the reason they say Medes and Persians is because the Persians conquered the Medes, and so they're Medo-Persian. So how does all of this fit? Pastor, how does all this fit in the church? What does this mean? A letter to us? Is this a message for us? Are we going to be divided? What does this mean? Now remember, this is a message not for the church. This is a message that we can learn from if we will look and find our parts for it. So the word Babylon, let me start this out. The word Babylon means sown in confusion or chaos. We live in a world that literally is a cesspool of confusion. People don't even know they don't even know what they want. We will make decisions in this country based on popular opinion, not on what God says. Based on what somebody, I think we should do this. Okay, well, let's do it. I've never understood that one. Why not stand for what you believe no matter what somebody else thinks? So I'm going to make my mind up according to what everybody else says, and if everybody else shouts loud enough, then I will be confused, and the world is confused, and everything around us is chaos. So number 2, let's look at 3 verses, and I want to show you something. Verse 5, the king saw. So we see that he sees something. The king saw, verse 14, and I'd love to say I claim this. I borrowed this from Robert Morris, this one little section right here. So verse 5, he saw. Verse 14, he heard. And verse 15, he knows, he made known. So in other words, I saw the handwriting. Daniel, I've heard of you. And also, Daniel, I need you to make known what the writing or the interpretation is. So if you'll notice something in verse 4. Now, I don't want to confuse you. I want to go back to verse 4 where they're having their 1,000-member party. So they're having their 1,000-member party, and they drank to the gods of gold and silver and bronze and iron and wood and stone. I want you to notice something with me. This is an upper echelon. This is a high-tier leadership of Babylon. Slaves aren't invited to this. Daniel is not here. Let's get this clear. Daniel is not here. It's a private party. It's a private let's get drunk party. And let's all talk about me party. And let's exalt me party. So the king saw. This is exactly out of his mouth. He saw and he heard and he wanted it made known. So he saw, he heard, and he knew. So this is what this guy did. This guy saw the Lord move. He saw Rakshak and Benny walk out of that fire. He saw them. He heard how his grandfather promoted Daniel, and he knew his grandfather turned and followed the Lord. So he saw, he heard, and he knew. Still, his pride. See, we start breaking this down. His pride and his arrogance and his selfishness, and I want to say his entitlement. His entitlement and his pride and his arrogance and his selfishness got him into more trouble than we could ever imagine. This is what happens when we feel like we're entitled. Well, I go to church here. That means I cannot pick up after myself if I don't want to. I go to church here, so that means I can pitch a fit if I don't get what I want. I live in this country, so I should be able to drive whatever speed limit I want. It's so easy, guys. I'm telling you. It's so easy. So, verse 23. This is what gets him in trouble. Verse 23. Now, remember, Daniel wasn't there when we look at verse 23. The hand appeared. Man, his hand floating, no arm to it, and finger starts writing. But you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels have been brought before you. And this is what Daniel says about his party earlier, that he wasn't there. He says, you have praised the gods of gold and silver. Exactly what he said. And of bronze and irons and of wood and stone. Exactly, word for word, what he said. And this is what he says. He's reading the king's mail, which do not see, hear, or know. So in other words, this is what the world is doing today. And I'm not down on America. I'm telling it like it is. We don't have a lot of time left. I'm sorry. We're not blessed with thousands of years. We can't just do everything we want anymore. We have got to realize that the days are numbered. See, here's the thing. The world that we live in chaos, in confusion, they know better. They have seen the church, and they have heard the worship and the testimonies. Man, they have no excuses. I mean, we probably need to be thinking, in today's society, I'm going to have to just be as straight up bold with you as I can be. How's your relationship with the Lord? And people say, well, my grandmother, she took me to church when I was a kid. That ain't getting it. How's your relationship with the Lord? Well, I go to church. I go to church every Christmas and every Easter. I go, unless it comes to ice storm, I don't go then. Know how is your relationship with the Lord? Because I'm going to tell you right now, the world is being numbered and weighed and divided. So you got to figure out which side you're on really fast. Because their pride and their arrogance and their indifference, the world chooses not to see, not to hear, and not to know God. Now remember, Babylon was the largest city, and it had the highest population of any city in the world at its time. And I want you to notice something with me. The river divided it. and it was impenetrable. Can't nobody get us. We're safe in here. Think about this. I don't really have paying attention to people's rights to worship. We're in America. We don't have that problem. I have friends across this country that still are not allowed to have church. They've been out of service for a year. I want to ask you what that's going to do to a church. What's that going to do to a church? The devil is trying to destroy the thing that he fears most. Why do we keep on no matter what? Because we're not going to allow the devil to destroy. We're going to fight to the bitter end. Come on now. So we're impenetrable. These things can't happen to us. And the Medo-Persian army is right outside the walls, right outside the gates. And I don't know if you know this, but the Persians, they weren't going to sit out there forever. They couldn't outwait them. They had too many resources inside. In other words, we'll starve to death before they starve to death. So we've got to do something. They did something that they had done before. They went upstream. They diverted the river. The river water level fell so subtly. Do you realize sometimes things happen so subtly and so slowly that we don't even know they're happening? The river lowered, it didn't rise, I'm sorry, it lowered, it just got lower so subtly, people just went on about their business. They didn't even notice it until the soldiers walked right through the gates, right through the river, because it wasn't raging anymore. And they took the city without a single battle. They didn't even raise a sword. They didn't raise a spear. They didn't even shed any blood because they just sat back and said, okay, well, you taking us over? Okay. I feel like I'm living that right now. The devil, you're taking over our churches. You're taking over our world. And I'm just supposed to be okay with this? Do you know they were so large that people on the outskirts of the city didn't even know that the inside had been breached and taken? Literally, I can't think, just went blank on his name. Basically, he reported and recorded, a Persian historian, and said the inner city was taken. The people on the outside never even knew anything happened. We're not that sheltered in southern Bible Belt America, y'all. We're not. Because whatever happens, we need to be paying attention to it. Belshazzar was killed that night. Bang, killed him. Some say that Darius busted his head open with a candelabra or something like that. Darius the Mede took over, 62 years old that night. And here's what I think the message on the wall means for us today. Your land, your culture. Last week, we looked at what Moses said. I'm the one that brought you up, Exodus chapter 34. I'm the one that brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of Egypt, the culture of Egypt. The land or the culture of America is divided. The God of this present darkness has been numbered. This is not a bad thing right here, y'all. This is a good thing. The God of this present darkness has been numbered. His days are coming to an end. He has been weighed. And his kingdom is divided. And you know what divides? You know what divides? The river, baby. We are the river. The church is the river. And somebody's got to stand firm when everything else is divided. That's who we are. We're the river. Man, Belshazzar's father. I want you to get this. Belshazzar's father, Nabonidus, was traveling around setting up worship sites to sin. He was promoting everything that is wrong. Belshazzar insulted God, disrespected God, exalted himself before God. The vessels he used were sacred, and he knew it. And he knew it. He knew it. Cities may fall, empires will definitely be divided, kings will be removed, but the river, I promise you, will stay. Babylon's not a big city anymore. Babylon's a ruin now. Located in modern-day Iraq. It is a ruin now, but you know what's still there? The river. The river's not affected by the opinion of the people. Well, I don't like the river being frozen over. It doesn't care. I don't like that the river's muddy today. I can't catch fish. It does not care. I don't like that the river flooded and washed my little outhouse away. It does not care. It's not affected by the opinion of the people. And when the land is divided, the river, the church, keeps flowing. The God of this present darkness is not going to shut down the church. It's not going to happen. When the land is divided, the river will keep flowing. And here's the message. Let me break it down again. The river is the church. We will stand when everything else fails and when everything else falls. The river is the church. It will outlast the division. It will outlast kings. It will outlast principalities. It will outlast wars, and it will outlast battles. And it will stand. And the river or the church is what everyone is drawn to. You ever wonder why every major city's built upon a major river? It's because everybody's drawn to the river. The river is what feeds them. It's what quenches their thirst. It's what supplies their needs. You can't quench thirst if you don't have water to pump it to them. When the world is numbered and the world is weighed and the world is divided, the church will be the one left standing every time. It always has been, it always will be. In the middle of the divide, the church will be there. So let me challenge you with this. If you're not part of the river, then you're part of the divided. Let me say it real clear so we understand it. If you're not part of the river, then you're part of the divided. Hello again, and thank you for tuning in. I pray that today's sermon has spoken to your heart and has ministered to you well. We just want you to know that we have two locations, one at our Sparta campus, our main campus at Sparta on the square in Sparta, and our second campus is at Smithfield behind Ace Hardware. And we would love for you to call Christpoint Church your church home. And if you're viewing this and you can't get in to church and you feel like you want to be a part of the church, then you can always be a part of the church. Just drop us a note and let us know that you enjoy being on board with us. And if you'd like to give and be a part of the ministry, then you can do that by just sending a check to one of the locations at 614 Murphy Street, Smithfield, 13 Liberty Square in Sparta, and we'll get you on the road. We just love you so much. And you can download the Christpoint Church of Tennessee app, and you can give online. So we are real people. We're living real lives, and we're serving a real God. And we just want to tell everyone, welcome home. We're so glad that you tuned in with us. Welcome home.